Okay, can you hear me, everyone?
Yes.
We'll start a new lesson today. We will start inheritance. We will start with the core material as we always do, and then we will continue with the supplement material. Do you have school tomorrow?
Yes.
You have school tomorrow, okay. Okay, this is a very important lesson, inheritance. Let's start. We'll start with the definition of inheritance. What is inheritance? Inheritance is defined as the transmission of genetic information from one generation to the next generation. This genetic information, where is it found? What do I mean by genetic information?
DNA.
Yes, the DNA. We will start by looking at the DNA, revising its location and how does it look like and the structure, etc., etc. Now, the DNA, which is the genetic information or the chromosomes, they are the same thing. Where is it located? First, if we have a cell that contains a nucleus, this cell is called eukaryotic or prokaryotic?
Eukaryotic.
Eukaryotic. So in eukaryotic organisms, the DNA is found inside the nucleus. And if we have a cell like bacteria that has no nucleus, it is eukaryotic or prokaryotic?
Prokaryotic. Prokaryotic.
Is its DNA, is it inside a nucleus or free in the cytoplasm?
Free in the cytoplasm.
Free in the cytoplasm. We will focus on eukaryotic organisms and the DNA in eukaryotic organisms, that is linear or circular. Who remembers?
Circular.
No, it's linear. Your DNA looks like this. Okay, your chromosomes look like this, so it's linear. Okay, let's take it step by step. I want you to really pay attention. We will talk specifically about the human species. Humans have a total of how many chromosomes in every cell in their body?
46.
46 chromosomes, yes, it's true. 46 chromosomes is described as having a diploid number, or two sets of chromosomes, or sometimes 46 can be described as 23 pairs. 23 pairs, in other words, 23 multiplied by 2. 23 pairs, this means that every pair comes from where? One pair comes from who, and the other pair comes from who?
One from the parents, one from the male and one from the female.
Very good. One pair comes from the mother. In biology, coming from the mother also has another name that I want you to know. It's called maternal chromosomes. So maternal chromosomes are the chromosomes coming from the mother. And another pair comes from the father, or they are called paternal chromosomes. Okay, let's look at a single cell that, let's assume it has one pair of chromosomes. I have here my cell, and this is a nucleus. I'll make it big so that I can draw my chromosome. And I have 23 pairs. I will focus on one pair. This is one pair out of the 23 pairs, okay? One of the chromosomes is maternal. I will use the word maternal from now on. In other words, coming from the mother. And the other pair is what?
Paternal.
Paternal. Very good. Now, these chromosomes, they have many genes. They have thousands and thousands of genes, okay? These genes, how are they coded for? Let me remind you of the structure of the chromosome. Let's look at the structure of a single chromosome. This chromosome is a large molecule made up of smaller molecules bonded together. What is the smallest unit that makes up a DNA strand? We took it in the lesson.
Base.
Nucleotides.
Nucleotides, very good. In other words, I'm going to zoom in and look at a small piece from this chromosome. Let me change color. And I will find that this chromosome is made up of so many nucleotides bonded together. The nucleotide looks like this. Every nucleotide is made up of 3 parts. It's made up of a sugar, deoxyribose sugar, if you want to know its name. And what's this part? The phosphate. And the nitrogen base. Good. I have another nucleotide and the phosphate and the nitrogen base and another and so on. And this is opposed with another nucleotide moving in the opposite direction, a sugar and a phosphate and a nitrogen base, and a sugar and a phosphate and a nitrogen base. Now, what is fixed and what is variable? Which parts are fixed and which parts are variable?
The sugar and the phosphate are fixed.
Part is fixed. In other words, it's the same in all organisms, and it is known as the DNA backbone. And these bases are variable. We took this before. How many bases do we have?
4 bases.
4 bases. Good. Excellent. Now, I think I also gave you that. Every 3 bases codes for what?
1 amino acid.
Only.
1 amino acid, yes. Every 3 bases, every 3 nitrogen bases codes for 1 amino acid, and every 3 bases is called a base triplet. Base triplet. Okay, excellent. Very good. Now, let's go back to my chromosome. I have a long chromosome here that has many bases, thousands and thousands of bases. Every 3 bases code for 1 amino acid. And an amino acids bonded to each other give me what?
Protein.
Give me a protein. Very good. Now, why am I explaining all that? Because you get confused by several terms. The DNA contains the base triplet, or the DNA contains the genetic code. Genetic code. A lot of you are confused and you tell me that the DNA contains proteins. No, the DNA does not contain protein. The DNA contains the what? The genetic code. What is the genetic code? The DNA contains the order of bases, the correct order of bases that will be translated into proteins in the ribosomes. So the DNA, does the DNA contain proteins?
No.
No, the DNA codes for proteins. The DNA is responsible for the making of proteins, but it does not contain proteins. The DNA contains nucleotides. These nucleotides carry bases in a certain sequence. So the DNA do not contain proteins. I will say it 10 times. The DNA do not contain proteins. What does the DNA contain? It contains nucleotides. These nucleotides carry bases in a certain sequence. This certain sequence is called the genetic code. You will see it in a lot of questions in paper 2. They try to confuse you. They give you a table and they ask you what is present in the DNA. Protein, genetic code. It is the genetic code, and you have to understand. I don't want you to memorize without understanding. The DNA carries the genetic code. What is the genetic code? It is the specific order of the nucleotides. It is the specific order of the bases. These bases will be translated into proteins in the future, later on. So the DNA controls what these cells does because it will control which proteins are being produced, but it does not contain any protein. Is this clear?
Doctor, can you repeat what the genetic code means?
Okay, the genetic code is this. Let me get you a picture. The genetic code is the order of bases. To simply speaking, the genetic code is the order of bases. Let me get you a picture. It is somewhere here. Yes. This picture will show you. This is a very clear picture. Here you have the chromosome or the DNA, one of the chromosomes, and we are looking inside the chromosome. We find here the backbone of the DNA that is made up of the sugar and the phosphate. And what are these?
Nitrogen base.
Very good, nitrogen bases. Every three codes for what?
Amino acid, one amino acid.
Amino acid. Every three codes for. It's not that every three is an amino acid. No. Every three codes for an amino acid. What does code for mean? It means that every three carries the message for the making of a particular amino acid. It is made in the ribosomes. So this is what I mean by the base sequence. This is the DNA. The DNA is not made up of any proteins. The DNA is made up of nucleotides. This is the nucleotide. Many nucleotides on top of each other and in front of each other. And then they're twisted to make a double helix. So does the DNA contain any protein?
No.
No protein in the DNA. Please put this in mind. No proteins at all in the DNA. Then what is the composition of the DNA? Nucleotides. Nucleotides in a certain sequence. And this sequence or this order will be translated into different proteins. And we don't have the same order of bases. That is why we are all different. Remember in classification, when they used to study organisms of the same species, and they used to find that they are different according to the order of bases. Yes, Ziad. Ziad, you had a question?
Miss, how does it yeah. ازاي ال DNA ما فيهاش proteins يعني can you repeat this idea?
My dear, the DNA is made up of this small unit, this nucleotide. Is this a protein? This one, the one I'm pointing at. The
No.
DNA is made up of nucleotides. Okay, a nucleotide is not
No.
protein. A nucleotide is something and protein is something else. What's hard about that? So the DNA does not contain proteins.
Okay.
The
thank you.
DNA, it controls the making of proteins, yes, but it does not contain proteins. And I will tell you how does it control the making of proteins. These nucleotides, they have, or they are made up of three parts, Ziad. They're made up of a sugar and a phosphate, which is fixed, and a variable base. This base is one of four, A, T, C, or G. And these bases can be arranged in a particular order. This order determines which protein will be produced. So the DNA contains nucleotides, contains this. This is not a protein. This is not a protein. This is not a protein. Okay? Clear, Ziad? Yes, yes, Hadiya.
Is one double helix one chromosome?
Yes, one double helix, a whole double helix is one chromosome.
Okay, how is there variation if you inherit a full double helix? Won't it be the same?
No, you don't inherit the same order of bases. The order of bases is different. That's why we are all different. I've said it 100 times. You inherit, or we all have the same sugar and the same phosphate. But do we have the same order of bases?
No.
No, that's why we are all different. That's why there is variation. If we all had the same order of bases, then we will all be identical. Okay? Fine. Now, why am I starting all this? We took this before, actually. This is all old material. We'll go back to my cell and we'll go back to the pair of chromosomes. This is a pair of chromosomes. One chromosome from the mother and one chromosome from the father. Okay? Now, let's jump directly into a particular characteristic. Let's discuss the inheritance of height. Your father, let's say your father is tall, and your mother is short. Now the question is, why did you turn out to be tall? You inherited a pair of chromosomes from your parents. You inherited one chromosome from the mother and the other chromosome from the father. This chromosome is divided, or it contains so many different genes. Every part of the chromosome, every section of the chromosome contains many bases. Every 3 bases codes for 1 amino acid, and many amino acids codes for proteins. So every part of the chromosome codes for one particular protein or one particular characteristic. What does this mean? For example, this chromosome that you inherited from your mother carries the gene that says that you will be short. This is from the mother. And you inherited another chromosome from the father that says that you will be tall. One gene from the father that says that you will be tall, another gene from your mother that says that you will be short. And scientists, in order to study the genes, they give them letters. A capital letter means that this gene is dominant. What does dominant mean? Dominant means strong or weak?
Strong.
Strong. And you inherited the gene from your mother that is recessive, represented with a small letter. Recessive means strong or weak?
Weak.
Weak. Okay? Recessive. We'll use the word recessive, not weak. So you inherited this genotype. I'll tell you what's genotype in a minute. You inherited one gene from your father that wants you to be tall, and this gene is dominant over the recessive one that you inherited from your mother. So you will be tall or short?
Tall.
Tall. Very, very good. Now, if you noticed, the gene is made up of 2 parts. It's made up of one part that you inherited from your father and one part that you inherited from your mother. This part, of course, it's not called a part in biology. It's called an allele. So what is a gene? Let's take it step by step. A gene is a section of a DNA that codes for a particular protein. It is a section of the DNA that codes for a particular characteristic. This gene is made up of how many parts? 2. This gene is made up of 2 alleles. An allele, these are the alternative forms of the gene. Again, I'll repeat it until you understand it. Here, 1 minute, Gamil. I have a cell. And we are looking at a pair of chromosomes. Just a pair. You have 46 chromosomes. You have 23 pairs. 1 pair from the mother and another pair from the father. I will look at just 1 pair. These chromosomes are made up of nucleotides. They're not made up of proteins. These nucleotides carry bases in a certain sequence. Every 3 bases code for what? One amino acid, and many amino acids together make a protein.
I have a question.
Let me finish. These chromosomes, I'm going to divide these chromosomes into sections. Every section is a gene. This is the gene, this is the gene, this is the gene, this is the gene. This is the gene. So what is a gene in biology? A gene is defined as a length or a section of DNA that codes for a particular what? Protein. Very good. Or the gene is a section or a length of DNA that codes for a particular characteristic. Now let's look closely at this gene. This gene is made up of 2 separate parts, 2 separate chromosome pieces. Every piece comes from a parent. Every piece is called the allele. And every chromosome has 1 allele. You inherit 1 allele from every parent. Together, they make a what? A gene. Either this allele that you inherit is strong or dominant, or weak. When it's weak, what is it called?
Recessive.
Recessive. Who had a question?
Miss, I had a question. I wanted to know, based on what we know, if a gene is recessive or dominant.
Okay, you will understand now while we're speaking. It's dominant if it appears on your physical appearance. When you inherited this gene, 1 dominant from the father and 1 recessive from the mother, and you became tall. Why did you become tall? Because you had one dominant allele. This dominant allele made you tall, and it completely covered or masked the recessive allele. The recessive allele was as if it was not there.
Yes.
Yes,
The dominant is the one expressed when present, صح?
yes, of course. The dominant allele is the one that is expressed in the phenotype of the organism. I just want to be slow because some of you took this before and find it very easy, and some of you did not take it before. So I want to be slow. I am intentionally slow. So be patient, please. If you took it before and you understand it, good. But be patient because others did not take it before. Okay, for everyone. Do you now understand what is a gene and what's an allele? A gene is part of the big
Yes.
chromosome. This is a gene. A gene is part of the chromosome that codes for a particular protein. This gene is made up of how many alleles?
Two alleles.
How many parts? Two. Okay? You get one allele from one of the parents. And every chromosome has a particular allele. So every chromosome has one allele only. You inherit one allele from one of the parents. Together, they will make a gene. And then this gene, how it will affect you, it depends which allele is dominant and which is recessive. You'll find it very easy with time. Okay.
Miss,
Yes.
is there a definition for allele that we
Yes.
need to memorize?
Alternative. Yes. Be patient. An allele are the alternative forms of the same gene. This is the definition. The alternative form of a gene. Okay. Now let me go to the PowerPoint of yours so I don't jump one by one. Okay, so let's use the PowerPoint. I hope until now what I said is clear. Okay, I'm going to start using letters. Let's jump and start using letters. Scientists, when they were studying genes and they wanted to know what will you inherit from every parent, they gave genes letters so that they can study it easily. And they used the same letter for a particular gene made up of two alleles. They used a capital letter for dominant or recessive alleles. Capital means it's dominant or recessive. Very good. A capital letter means it's a dominant allele. And the same letter, it has to be the same letter, but small case, therefore it is dominant or recessive?
Recessive.
Recessive. Very good. Let's understand together. If you understand this lesson, well, I don't want you to study it. I want you to go answer questions immediately because it's like a mathematical lesson. It has very little memorization and lots of understanding. Let's say, for example, B capital codes for black eyes, dominant black eyes, and B small codes for recessive green eyes. And don't tell me, why don't we use a green color? You cannot, the letter G, you have to use the same letter. Either you will inherit the following. You will either inherit one dominant from the mother and one dominant allele from the father, or you will inherit one dominant from one of the parents and one recessive from another parent, or you will inherit two recessive alleles from both parents. Now, this is a question for anyone who wants to answer. If you inherited this, two dominant alleles for black eyes, what will be the color of your eyes?
Black.
Brown.
Black. We're not talking about brown. We're talking about black. Okay, definitely you will have very black eyes because you inherited both dominant alleles from both parents. If you inherited one dominant from one of the parents and one recessive from another parent, what will be the color of your eyes?
Black.
Also black. Okay, fine. If you inherited two recessive alleles from both parents, then what will be the color of your eyes?
Green.
Green. Yes, very good. You will have green eyes because you have inherited two recessive alleles, one from every parent. This, what I'm writing here, is called the genotype. Genotype. What is the genotype? The genotype is the genetic formula for the gene, just like I am writing here, B capital, B capital, B small, B small, B capital, B small. Genotype is the genetic makeup of the gene in terms of the alleles present. Let me write the definition for you one by one. So what is the genotype? The genotype is what we were writing in a while ago. This is genotype. This is genotype. This is genotype. These are genotypes. So what is the genotype? It is the genetic makeup of the gene in terms of the alleles present. Pay attention to the definition. It's the genetic makeup of the gene. In other words, this gene is made up of which alleles? There are two dominant, or there are two recessive, or one dominant or one recessive. This is the genotype. When I used to ask you, this will give me which colored eyes, and you used to tell me black. So the eyes are black. This is called the phenotype. What is the phenotype? Very easy. Phenotype comes from the physical appearance. The phenotype, these are the physical or the observable features of an organism. In other words, what do you see on the organism itself? This organism has black eyes or green eyes, the physical features of the organism. This is the phenotype. So the genotype is what you inherit from your parents. Which alleles you inherited from your parents? The genotype, it affects your physical appearance. So the genotype affects your what?
Your
Appearance.
Appearance.
Very good, which is the phenotype. So phenotype is the appearance. To cut a long story short, it's very simple. The genotype are the alleles that you inherited, and it affects your phenotype or the appearance. Anything hard?
No.
Very good. Now, these are just terms, but they actually mean very easy stuff. If you inherited, if this is your genotype, you inherited two dominant alleles from your parents because both alleles are the same and they are both dominant. This genotype is described as what? Who remembers?
Homozygous dominant.
The homozygous dominant. Those who are new, don't worry at all. It's actually very easy. Homozygous dominant. This is homozygous dominant. What does this mean? Homozygous means both alleles are the same. And dominant means both alleles are what?
Strong.
Dominant. Very easy. Can you guess how will the genotype look like if it is described as homozygous recessive? Who will tell me?
2 small letters.
Very good. Be small, be small. Homozygous means the same. And recessive, I think recessive is very obvious. Recessive means it's a weak allele and it is represented by a small letter. Now, what if your genotype is B capital, B small? In other words, they are different. What are they called?
Heterozygous.
In biology, this genotype is known as heterozygous. Heterozygous. Okay, so that we don't rush, let's revise what we took from the very, very beginning. What did we take? We studied the chromosomes. We have a cell, and we are looking at a pair of chromosomes. One pair, we have 46 chromosomes or 23 pairs. We're looking at one of the pairs only. One of them is maternal, coming from the mother. And one of them is what?
Paternal.
Paternal, means coming from who?
The father.
The father. The chromosomes or the DNA, do they contain proteins?
No.
No, 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 no. Then what are they made up of? They're made up of smaller molecules. What are they called?
Nucleotides.
Nucleotides. Excellent. Now, a single nucleotide is made up of what? Help me.
A sugar, a
A
phosphate.
sugar base.
Very good.
A phosphate base.
Phosphate.
It's not sugar base, phosphate base, just sugar only. Okay, sugar base and nitrogen base. It's called nitrogen base. Okay, this is the nitrogen base. Okay, so this is the subunit that makes up the DNA, like the glucose makes starch. Amino acid makes protein. Nucleotide makes DNA. So this is the smallest unit of a DNA. Which parts are fixed and which part is variable?
The phosphate and the sugar are fixed.
And what is variable?
Nitrogen
Nitrogen base.
Nitrogen base. How many bases do we have?
4.
4. Excellent. And they bind in a specific manner. Can you remind me which two bases always bind together?
AT,
CG.
C and CG.
Excellent. Very good. Every 3 bases code for what?
One amino acid.
One
One
amino
amino
acid.
acid.
And every 3 bases is called the base triplet. Perfect. And many amino acids make a what?
Protein.
A protein. Amazing. You are amazing. Okay, very good. Now these chromosomes, I will divide them into sections, and every section codes for one protein. Every section is a what?
a gene.
It's a gene. Lovely. You inherit those genes from your parents, and every gene is made up of 2
About
Allele.
excellent alleles. You take one allele from every parent. Every chromosome has one allele. Very nice. These alleles, when scientists come to study them and they give them letters, then these letters are called what?
Genotype.
Genotype, okay? The genetic makeup of the gene in terms of the alleles present. A dominant allele is a capital letter or a small letter?
Capital.
Capital letter. And a recessive allele is capital or small?
Small.
Small.
If I have 2 capital letters, this genotype is described as what?
Homozygous
Homozygous
dominant.
Dominant. 2 recessive.
Homozygous recessive.
Perfect. And then 1 dominant and 1 recessive.
Heterozygous.
Heterozygous. Okay, you are more than amazing. Fine. Now let's look at the pictures before we move on. So here, this is the picture showing you that a part or a section of the DNA is the gene. Okay, you have many genes and you inherit those genes from your parents and they determine how you look, eye color, etc., etc. This is a nice picture showing you a pair of chromosomes, and on every chromosome you have one allele. One allele on every chromosome. For example, those 2 is homozygous recessive. Those 2 are homozygous dominant, homozygous dominant, homozygous dominant, homozygous recessive. Heterozygous means I have 1 dominant and 1 recessive. These terms are very important because they come in problems and you need to understand them in order to solve the problems. Alleles can be dominant or recessive. I think now this is clear, okay? When you come to write a heterozygous genotype, you have to write the capital letter first. Okay, now let's look at Punnett squares. What are Punnett squares? Punnett squares, these are squares that will help you predict the genotype of the parents. What does this mean? For example, let's talk about another characteristic. Let's talk about, give me any example. Let's talk about eye color. Okay, this is the easiest example. Eye color. Let's say the father, his genotype, what he inherited from his parents, are B capital, B small. This is his genotype. He has black eyes and he is heterozygous. And the mother, she has her genotype, she has green eyes, and this is her genotype, homozygous recessive. This father was crossed with this mother. What is the probability of the eye color of the children? How do we know? Let me tell you. We know that meiosis happens in which the diploid cell will split to give me 4 haploid cells, and each haploid cell will have only 1 allele. In other words, the genotype of the father will split to give me the gametes, B capital and B small.
B small.
Very good. And the mother also, in her reproductive system, she will have meiosis and she will have gametes. Gametes will have only half the number of chromosomes. In other words, the gametes, every gamete will have 1 allele. So all her eggs will have this allele. We want to know the children. How do we know the eye color of the children or predict the eye color of the children? By something known as the Punnett square. I'll just write it here to make myself more space. This is the father, the genotype of the father, crossed with the genotype of the mother. The father has black eyes, and we said B capital for black, it's dominant, and B small for green. You have to write all this information in front of you. And this is the mother that has green eyes. What about their children? There is a chance that their children will have green eyes. Let's see. We will make a Punnett square. and we will split the alleles of the parents. This is one gene of the father. We will split this gene into two alleles. B capital, B small. Where did we get it from? This is the gene of the father. We will split the gene into its two alleles because meiosis takes place. Fine? And this is the genotype of the mother. We will split her gene into two alleles. I have an allele here and an allele here. And then we will try to make assumptions. This child here, child 1, he will inherit one dominant allele from his father and one recessive allele from his mother. His genotype will be heterozygous. Do you all agree with me? I will only do the first one and then I'll show you how. I'll give you a chance to do the rest. This second child here, what will be his genotype? Who will tell me?
Recessive.
This
Yeah, the recessive.
Dominant.
Heterozygous.
Heterozygous also. I
That will
take
be
one
small.
allele from the father, one allele from the mother. Correct. Now this child number 3, what will be his genotype?
Homozygous recessive.
Homozygous
Homozygous
recessive.
recessive.
Very good. Excellent. And this child number 4, what will be his genotype?
Homozygous
Homozygous
recessive.
recessive.
Excellent. So how many children out of 4 will have black eyes?
2 children.
2 children out of
Two.
4. Now, I don't keep the ratio like that. I can divide it by a common factor. What's a common factor?
2. So
2.
the ratio is
So
going to be 1 to 2.
1 to 2. Very
Two.
good. 1 to 2 will have black eyes. And what's the ratio of children having green eyes?
2 to 4. Also, so it's 1 to 2.
Which is also 1 to 2. Very good. This is the ratio. If they ask you for the probability means they want a percentage. So 50% will have black eyes and 50% of the children will have what?
Green eyes.
Green eyes. Perfect.
Miss, can you re-explain the ratio?
Of course I can. How many we have here? A total of 4 children, or we assumed that there will be a total of 4 children. How many out of the 4 will have black eyes?
2.
2 out of?
4.
Now a little bit of math. Here, do we leave the ratio like that, or you can divide it by a common factor, which is 2?
Yes, we can.
Okay, then when we could divide it by a common factor, it will be 2 to 4 and then 1 to 2.
Okay.
Okay, now
Thank you, Miss.
you're welcome, my dear. Fine. Other examples. Good, good, good. Let me choose another example just so that you understand that it's really actually very easy and very interesting. Give me another characteristic that crosses your mind other than eye color. Huh?
Hair color.
Blue, for example.
Hair color? Okay. Hair.
Skin color.
Let's choose skin color. Skin color. Fine. Let's say usually darker colors are dominant, but that's not the case. Let's say we have brown skin. Brown skin, that will be dominant here. So if it's dominant, what letter do I give it? Capital or small?
Capital.
Capital.
Capital. Okay, B capital. And I have white skin. Okay. That will be given B capital or B small?
B small.
B small. Okay. Now let's say the father is homozygous dominant crossed with a mother that is homozygous recessive. Now, before I even do a Punnett square, 100% of the children will have brown skin or white skin.
Brown skin.
Yes. Let's do it. I have the father's genotype. The father's gene is homozygous dominant. That will be split into 2 alleles, one B capital and the other B capital. And the mother is homozygous recessive. That will be split into 2 alleles, B small, B small. Tell me, what is the genotype for all the children?
Heterozygous.
All of them. All of them. Okay? So that's 100% ratio. All of them will be brown. There's only a chance that a child will be white when one of those parents is crossed with a homozygous recessive individual. Okay? Now, we want to talk about something called incomplete dominance. What is incomplete dominance? This is the example here in front of you. I have a red flower that is homozygous dominant, R capital and R capital. And I have a white flower that is homozygous recessive, R small, R small. And we made a Punnett square, and all the children were heterozygous, R capital, R small. What do you expect the color of the flowers to be?
Red.
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 But they all did not turn out to be red. They turned out to be a color in between red and white. They turned out to be pink. This rarely happens. It does happen, but it rarely happens. And this is called incomplete dominance. In other words, the recessive allele was not very recessive. It was a little bit strong and it had some effect on the phenotype. Like, for example, it's common in humans. If you have a very dark man, let's say a black colored man, and he mated with a very white female, the children will look what skin color will they have?
Brown.
Brown. Something in between. Okay, this is called incomplete dominance. So complete dominance, this is when the recessive allele does not show at all. But incomplete dominance, this is when the recessive allele has some effect on the phenotype. Okay? Now, questions are not very nice. They are tricky. They usually come from back to forth. And there is something called a family pedigree chart, like this. You'll see it a lot in exam papers. It usually confuses a lot of students. Here, this chart, it is done in order to find out and to trace a particular disease and how it runs in a family. Let's look at this example. Here is an example following a chart that traces how a certain dominant cardiovascular genetic disorder runs in a family. C capital is for the dominant allele and C small is for the recessive allele. So this C capital or the dominant allele is for the disease. A lot of you think and have in mind that the disease is always recessive. Not always. The disease can be dominant. You always have to read the question. And this small c is the recessive allele. Let's say you are given this chart without given the genotype. There is no genotype. You are the ones who are supposed to figure out the genotype. And they give you a key. They tell you that this square is an affected male. Okay, so let's look at this red square. This male is sick. He is sick. So what will be the possible genotypes of this male if he is sick? What are the two possible genotypes for a sick male?
Heterozygous and homozygous dominant.
Yes, this male, his genotypes will either be heterozygous, one dominant allele and one recessive allele, or both of them are dominant. He is homozygous dominant. Why did we add a dominant allele in every genotype? Because he's sick. And we know that the sickness here is represented by a dominant allele. So the dominant allele must be present in his genotype. Either he is heterozygous or he is homozygous dominant. Now, why did we say that he is heterozygous, not homozygous dominant? I will tell you why. I don't expect you to know it now. We will look at his children. This male, he married this female. This female is healthy, okay? Because how did I know? Look at this key. I'll go to the key. She is an unaffected female. So I know that she is healthy. So her genotype has to be homozygous recessive. She does not have any dominant allele in her genotype because she's healthy. Now, this male, how do I know that he is heterozygous? I go and look at his children. This is one child. This is another child. This is another child. And this is another child. How did I know that these are his children? Because they branch off this couple. Do you see the lines? Are all his children sick?
Yes.
No. One child is healthy here.
Okay.
As long as one child is healthy, then this male cannot be homozygous dominant. If he is homozygous dominant, all his children will be sick. Let's slow down a little bit because some students are new. Okay, again, the example that we have, C capital codes for sickness, a certain sickness in the heart that will cause a certain cardiovascular disease, coronary heart disease, okay? So C is a dominant allele for sickness, and the small c means I'm a healthy person and I don't have any sickness, okay? We have here a father crossed with a mother, okay? This mother is healthy. She is healthy. So what is her genotype if she is healthy?
Homozygous recessive.
Very good. Do you all agree? Do you all understand why she is homozygous recessive? Because she's healthy. We have here the dominant means she's sick. She does not have any dominant allele. This father, he's sick. So there are two possible genotypes for this father. Either he is homozygous dominant or he is heterozygous. Yes? Do you all agree with me or you don't? Who doesn't? Who's confused? Who is confused? Okay, I did not get any questions. Then I assume you all understand. Now, this father, he will mate with this healthy female, and some children will be sick, but also some will be healthy. There is a child here, there is a female or a male here that has this genotype, C small, C small. This means that this father is heterozygous or homozygous dominant. Who will tell me?
Heterozygous.
Heterozygous. Now, those that don't understand, let's do a Punnett square to try to understand. I have two possibilities. Either this father is homozygous dominant or this father is heterozygous. In all cases, he is crossed with a healthy mother. So I will have here, let's say, a homozygous dominant father crossed with a healthy mother. And this is the Punnett square. I will split the genes into the two alleles. I will split this gene into C capital, C capital. I will split this gene here into C small, C small. Please don't write anything here. All the children here in this first cross, what will be their genotype?
Heterozygous.
They will all be heterozygous. You all agree? So they will all be what? Sick or healthy?
Sick.
Sick. Very good. Now, if we will assume the other possibility in which we have a heterozygous father crossed with a homozygous recessive mother. Let's do the Punnett square. This is my Punnett square, two vertical lines, two horizontal lines. I'm going to take this gene and break it into the two alleles, C capital, C small. I will take this gene and I will break it into the two alleles, C small, C small. What's the genotype for the first child? Who will help me?
Heterozygous.
Heterozygous, okay? C capital, C small. And then this second child,
Heterozygous.
homozygous recessive. You all agree? I took one C small from here, one C small from here. And then I have child number 3. What will be his genotype?
Heterozygous.
Heterozygous. And child number 4, what will be his genotype?
Homozygous.
Homozygous recessive.
Homozygous.
This means that some are healthy and some are sick. Okay? What does this teach you? This teaches you that if you have an individual with a homozygous dominant allele, this dominant allele will have to affect all of the children. Now, we can go back and understand this genetic diagram. Hopefully. This genetic diagram. It will be given to you without the genotypes, and you are the ones who are expected to know the genotypes. This father is sick, and this mother is healthy. As long as they tell you that this mother is healthy, you should know the genotype of the mother. She is homozygous recessive. This father, we don't know his genotype, either homozygous dominant or homozygous recessive. When we looked at the children and we found that one child is sick and the other is healthy, then we said that this father is heterozygous. Now, do you understand why we said that he is heterozygous, not homozygous dominant? If he was homozygous dominant, all the children will be sick or healthy?
Sick.
Sick. Very good. That's why we're saying that this father is heterozygous, because if he was homozygous dominant, all the children will be sick. All of them will have at least one dominant allele and they will be sick. Okay?
Yes.
Yes.
Can you explain that again?
Yes, I'll explain this again. Forget this example and let's look at this. Okay? I have here a sick mother and a healthy father. How did I know? Because I will use the key. Look at the key. This red circle is an affected female. And this blue square is an unaffected male. And we know that that sickness is represented by a dominant allele. So this sick mother, what will be her genotype?
Heterozygous.
Heterozygous, or she might be homozygous dominant, because both of us will give us sickness. Why did I say that this mother is heterozygous? I go look at the children. Are all the children sick? Or some of them are sick and some of them are healthy?
Some of them.
Some of them.
Some of them. As long as some are healthy, then she was not homozygous dominant. She was heterozygous.
Okay.
Okay?
Thank you.
Good. You're welcome. Now, other terms that have very simple meanings. Whenever you see the word true breeding or pure breeding, it just means homozygous. It's just another word for homozygous. Now, the questions will look like this on the exam. Show the possible allele combination of the offspring produced when a pure breeding short plant is bred with a pure breeding tall plant. At the beginning of the question, they will tell you that the height of the plant is controlled by a single gene that has two alleles, one for tall, one for short. The tall allele is dominant and it is shown as T capital. And the small allele is recessive and it is shown as T small. Okay, so now we know the alleles and what they represent. Now the question, show the possible allele combination of the babies of the offspring when you have a pure breeding short plant is bred with a pure breeding tall plant. What is pure breeding? What does pure breeding mean?
Homozygous.
Homozygous. And this question is so easy because you will simply translate the words. Pure breeding short plant. Pure breeding short plant. What is the genotype of this parent?
Homozygous recessive.
Excellent. Good girl. Pure breeding means they are the same and they are both short. So T small, T small. And then it is bred with another parent that is purebred, pure breeding, tall. So what will be the genotype for this parent?
Homozygous dominant.
Homozygous dominant. I just simply translated and I will do a Punnett square. This is my Punnett square. This is the gene for one parent and this is the gene for the other parent. The gene will be split into the two alleles and this will be split in the two alleles. And then I'm going to carry out the Punnett squared as we know it. T capital, T small, T small. All the children will be what?
Heterozygous.
Heterozygous. Is it clear for everyone? All the children then will be tall or short?
Tall.
Tall. Anyone has any questions? Okay, no one is asking any questions. Now, another question. Show the possible allele combinations of the offspring produced when two of the offspring from the first cross are bred together. In other words, two of those children. We said all of them are heterozygous. So they want to know if these two children are crossed together, what will be the offspring? So it will be heterozygous crossed with heterozygous. Again, we will do our traditional Punnett square. This is the gene for one parent crossed or divided into the two alleles. And this is the genotype for another parent broken down into the two alleles. Okay, we want to do it alone without looking at the screen. Here, this is my Punnett square. This is the heterozygous parent and the other heterozygous parent. What would be the genotype for the first child?
Homozygous dominant.
Homozygous dominant.
Dominant. You all agree? What will be the genotype for this child?
Homozygous dominant.
Homozygous dominant.
No.
Heterozygous.
Heterozygous, yes. What will be the genotype for this child? This is it.
Heterozygous.
Heterozygous also. What will be the genotype for this child?
Homozygous recessive.
Very good. What's the ratio? Tall to short. Tall to short. How many tall to short?
3 to 4?
3 to 1. One short only. Okay, 3 to 1. What's the percentage? Every square is 25%. So what's the percentage?
75.
75% tall, 25% short. Okay. Fine. Let's stop here today. And tomorrow in class, we will continue talking about the gender. How come you are a boy or you're a girl? Very easy, and the rest. Any questions today?
No.
Do you understand what?
Doctor,
Yes, yes.
I have a question, but not in the lesson.
Okay, then make it on WhatsApp. As long as it's not on the lesson, then let it be between the both of us on WhatsApp. Okay?
Okay, thank you.
Okay, welcome. See you tomorrow. Get paper 2. Tomorrow, get paper 2. Okay, see you tomorrow.
Okay.
Bye-bye.
Bye.
Bye.
Do we need year 9 notes?
No, you don't need anything.
Okay.
Okay, bye.